Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. This is your T-shirted historian, and welcome to Dungeons and Discussions. My buddy Grim should be along in just a moment. And happy 4th of July out there, by the way. And if you're not in the United States, well, I guess wish us a happy Treason Day or whatever. And here I have Ironcaster.
Where am I?
Yeah, Dungeons and Discussions, buddy.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
I guess we change the background then.
we did. See. Oh, your background. Yeah. I guess you do.
Yeah.
Is that tarot cards?
Yes, those are.
Nice.
Yeah.
What kind of stream were you on?
Oh, this is what I've used this off and on for a while, like even on your show.
Oh, okay. Just terribly unobservant, I guess.
Sure, we'll go with that. So we
We do have a topic. Today's topic is post-apocalyptic role-playing, post-apocalyptic games, post-apocalyptic systems, and that sort of thing. And keep in mind, post-apocalypse can extend to just about any genre of TTRPG. I personally consider Kentaro Miura's Berserk to be a post-apocalyptic fantasy because basically it's like their world is in kind of a collapse after the magic comes back and all the monsters start popping up and everything. And of course, zombie apocalypse is another form of post-apocalypse. The post-apocalypse most people are familiar with is, post-nuclear apocalypse. And yes, Vampire Hunter D is post-apocalypse.
Well, I suppose that probably should beg the first question, though, of sort of what should, a couple of questions for sort of laying out what we're defining with the post-apocalypse. Because are we talking about, I guess, how long has it been going on? Has it happened so long that effectively all traces of the former civilization are effectively gone and we've kind of reverted back to a sort of primal state? Apologies.
Haha. Okay. As far as I'm concerned, anything that is, government has broken down and collapsed, and world order has collapsed, and day-to-day commerce and everything else like that has collapsed. I guess a good example of that, of a apocalypse that is a little bit more recent, would be like Twilight 2000. Because that's a post-apocalypse, but it's not necessarily like nuclear or anything. It's just, that order and law and everything else is broken down, and you guys are playing like soldiers and stuff. And here's a Grim.
Hello.
Of course, if we're talking about the post-apocalypse, then I think probably one of the most overt and obvious examples from fiction is probably going to be Mad Max. That tends to be sort of the default that everyone tends to go to. Yeah. And in that sense, Mad Max was kind of a genre-defining movie for that. Especially The Road Warrior, more so than Mad Max, in my opinion. Because Mad Max civilization was on its way to collapsing. But Road Warrior, everything has truly gone to the point where, not to mention, the visual style of that film set a lot of benchmarks for what a post-apocalypse people would, think it would look like, with, just dirty people and savage gangs of crazies and all that other stuff. And our good buddy Kit Marlowe says Crawford's Wolves of God fits that definition. Post-Romano British collapse. It doesn't feel like that, though, because we know it comes later. Yeah. But yeah, Wolves of God definitely is kind of a post-apocalyptic
medieval fantasy. Well, it's actually closer to just medieval reality. But yeah, Wolves of God is probably what I would call post-apocalypse, because it's after the natural order of law, order, rules, and everything else is broken down. Pretty much that whole period of what you would call like the Dark Ages would be almost a post-apocalypse, because it's after the Roman Empire has fallen. Civilization is kind of up in the air, chaos. So, yeah. So post-apocalypse can extend to just about any genre you want to think of. We just don't normally think about that. I mean, whoever plays a D&D game and says, this is happening in a post-apocalypse.
What was that prequel to Shadowrun? This fantasy game? Because that's
Earthdawn?
Earthdawn. That's predicated on a sort of Cthulhuid apocalypse with like inverted dungeons. So everyone was hiding away and then coming out to explore the changed world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and hey, Tapani Saraste says, wait, do we have a Planet of the Apes RPG? I'm sure we do, actually.
Not an official one, I don't think.
Maybe not officially, but I mean, not hard to think of one.
I mean, just kind of a brief Googling tells me that there was a game called Terra Primate, which I'm not entirely sure how easily accessible that one is, but from Goblinoid Games is also Apes Victorious, which is a Planet of the Apes game. Serial numbers filed off, trademark not found.
Yeah,
you could always just run after the bomb and limit people to apes and monkeys.
I would kind of say then that if you're going to talk about stuff with the serial numbers filed off, I have to say that Sacrifice, Iron and Incense is post-apocalypse, because it is it's based on very heavily on Berserk, and it's Berserk with the serial numbers filed off, but it also takes some influence from Dark Souls, Blasphemous, which are also basically post-apocalypse, whereas the natural order has fallen and chaos is running rampant. I don't know if I would necessarily say Warhammer is post-apocalypse. A lot of times it feels like it is.
I think it's mid-apocalypse.
Yeah. Well, stuff is falling, but not quite there yet. Yeah. And that would probably go for 40K too then.
Definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, as it happens, I guess apocalypse settings are pretty common, more so than you think. Dragonlance is kind of post-apocalypse in its own way. I mean, if you go with like the initial D&D, advanced D&D stuff, because it's like, the world is in chaos. The dragon lords are taking over. And, that's apocalyptic to me. But yeah, let's take a look at some games that we really like that are featuring post-apocalypse. I guess one of the easy ones is the classic Gamma World.
That's very, very different depending which edition you're talking about.
It is Metamorphosis Alpha Gamma World. I had the pleasure of playing with James Ward, and yes, he killed my character very quickly. Well, actually, he killed the entire party pretty quickly. But I kind of expected that going in. I like the premise of Gamma World, but I've never really enjoyed it as a game. I don't have the original Gamma World stuff. I think I have like an edition that came out a little bit later, and it was like a post-Terminator kind of 1990s.
How many editions has Gamma World been through?
I don't even remember.
Then there's the unofficial ones by people who were involved with Gamma World. I think the one that was based off 4th edition that we played recently, that was 7th edition.
Yeah.
I think that was the last official one, but there's been others.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and then of course, like I said, there's Metamorphosis Alpha, which is the earliest. To me, it's actually not one of my favorite post-apocalyptic games. The one version of it where they tried to kind of make some sense out of it was back when they had the 3.0, 3.5 Gamma World that was by White Wolf, which I have those books up on my shelf, where they pretty clearly stated in the beginning of the book, they said that, the reason that stuff is mutated and weird the way it is because of nano machines that have gone crazy, along with various bacilli and other things that have changed people, not just radiation. And it was kind of weird and wacky in its own way, but not to the extent that like original Gamma World was.
I think with Gamma World, you kind of want that wackiness. I think if you want a more serious approach to a post-apocalyptic setting, then you go elsewhere. I think.
Yeah. And that's a big difference between, like what I run on Sundays, which is which is a Darwin's World, which is much darker, because it's like in Darwin's World, if you get hit with radiation, you don't get superpowers, you get cancer.
Super cancer.
Yeah. Yeah. Darwin's World mutations are not necessarily a good thing. Because they involve genetic defects like simian deformities, autism, gigantism, things like that. Things where, the genetic makeup of people has altered so significantly that it has caused them to literally, like, their DNA has just gotten all bleh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they do have beast people, but these are not necessarily like mutations of the Gamma World order. They're just kind of like, they're referred to as beast people because they have a lot of bestial traits. Like you guys ran into a bear person, but I mean, obviously he's not an actual, ursoid. It's just, he just happens to look very bear-like with teeth and claws and fur.
Yeah.
Which is not the norm for humans, obviously. And I kind of like that darker apocalypse type stuff over the the kind of cheesy, happy weirdness.
The camp. So Fallout's somewhere between the two poles, then, between the wacky weirdness and the more serious outlook. So what's your take on Fallout, which we obviously have an RPG for now?
I haven't played the RPG, but being, of course, a pretty hardcore enjoyer of the video game series, I love it. But I love it for several different reasons. For one thing, I like the weird googie art kitsch aesthetic, as well as the some of the the Populux and Art Deco aesthetics to the game. Of course, that their people aren't necessarily so mutated as many, but yeah, they're definitely rough and tough, and they do, some of them do have mutations of various types, depending on what kind of stuff they've been caught up with.
It's that guy who turns into a tree, isn't there?
Yeah, but he was a ghoul to begin with.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. The ghouls, I think they wanted that for a kind of direct link to the past in the setting. But it's an interesting take on that kind of thing.
I think Fallout is able to kind of weave that line between the camp and the seriousness to sort of get you a little bit of both. And I think that's what kind of really makes it work as a setting.
I played, speaking of computer games, I played Metro Exodus when it was free on PS Plus a while back.
Oh yeah,
that was pretty good.
Yeah,
that's a setting that needs an RPG. I think there's some Stalker or Stalker-based RPGs, but I haven't seen anything based on Exodus or Metro at all yet.
Let's see, got some answers and questions out here in the audience. Kit Marlowe says Forbidden Lands is more traditional fantasy post-apocalyptic setting, which begs the question: is a game about the collapse more interesting than one about the attempts to recover? I'd say that depends on your group. I mean, to me, it seems like if you're playing a game that's mid-collapse, there's still elements of law and order. There's still a chance to maybe change things. People still have some kind of hope. Obviously, after the collapse, attempting to recover seems like a more interesting story to me. It's kind of like, okay, hey, guess what? The rules are all thrown out the window. How are you going to turn this around? Or are you going to turn this around? Or are you just going to become another one of the, the spoilers picking off the carcass of the old world, as it were? I don't know. What do you guys think?
It appeals to different things, I think. So, like, if you're going through the collapse, then fighting to preserve things or just fighting to survive, that's the focus of the game. And it doesn't tend to need a great deal of character motivation because you're constantly being faced with survival challenges. So, like, if you set a game during the onset of a zombie apocalypse, you're mostly going to be playing reactively to shit going on around you. And then if the game develops over time, it may change its character to be one of recovery. Kind of like how The Walking Dead would have, in the comics, it much more naturally evolved into how are we going to survive and rebuild, less so in the series, which I think is where they went wrong, because a lot of the conflicts and stuff started to feel contrived. Like, well, we can't give these characters a break. we've got to keep fucking them over. There's a style of post-apocalypse in British fiction, which I've mentioned before, called the kind of cozy apocalypse, where the characters tend to revert to something like a more agrarian way of life or whatever. John Wyndham's work kind of epitomizes the cozy apocalypse, like Day of the Triffids. How at the end of that, the people who can still see are kind of camped out on the Isle of Wight because it keeps the Triffids at bay, and they're gradually rebuilding, and it's all back to the farm and so on. There's a series called Survivors in the, I think, late 70s through early 80s, where a sort of super flu wipes out something like 90% of the population, and they end up settling in a manor house in the countryside and trying to farm and set up again. And that game, The Quiet Year, kind of taps into that, though it's a map drawing game. It's about recovery and making your settlement and surviving in the face of an oncoming threat. So that's an interesting approach. But I think it's different things. They scratch different itches, I think.
Where do you put Twilight 2000? Well, obviously Morrow Project is post-apocalypse for sure. But
yeah, that's explicitly about trying to rebuild and get the band back together, sort of thing. Twilight 2000. I mean, the original game had a very sort of explicit aim in that everything's fallen to shit. You just want to get home, and so it was about traveling back across from Eastern Europe to the coast, and then if you were American soldiers trying to find a way back to the States, or if you were British soldiers trying to find a way across the Channel. But later adventures tended to focus more on settlements and how people survived, like the whole Last Submarine series of adventures, because the submarine, it was using its nuclear reactor to provide power to a shoreline settlement. There's the moral dilemma of, do you take the submarine to get you home, or do you leave it where it can do some good and keep these people alive with mod cons for a few more years?
Oh, just a passerby. It's good to see you. This Cyberpunk Red is post-apocalypse. You think so? Grim has more agency with Cyberpunk Red than I do.
Cyberpunk isn't cozy. Cyber Generation, maybe that had a more of a sort of hopeful feel to it, and some of the Yo gangs were a bit more constructive, like the eco warrior ones. People like that, they were setting up farms and like hot houses and things through it. As to Cyberpunk more conventionally, it's kind of post-apocalyptic, but there's no actual apocalypse per se. There's the very brief orbital war. There's the genetically engineered crop blight that they used on South America to try and wipe out drugs, which ended up affecting crops, but that never really went full bore. There's the collapse of the USA into the various free states and so on. So I think it's more about a kind of political collapse than what we would traditionally call post-apocalypse. I mean, is Russia in a post-apocalypse? Has it been? It's an interesting question, but I don't know whether I'd call it post-apocalyptic, really. I mean, there's nothing to stop runaway capitalism in Cyberpunk, so I think it's mid-apocalypse, actually.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially since we know that it is going to recover and turn into Cyberpunk 2077 at some point.
Yeah, not much of a recovery, but
not much of a recovery, but Giant Lands, which doesn't get talked about very much, but one that I always kind of enjoyed was that is definitely post-apocalypse, but it is so far removed from the old times and stuff like that that it's almost kind of crossing the line into just pure fantasy with the way it's set up. And that's kind of something to think about too. If your fantasy game, like mine, is based around a ancient collapse, and this is a trope in a lot of fantasy and some JRPG type stuff. Whereas there were previous civilizations that were, much greater, much more advanced technologically, but for whatever reason they collapsed, they fell, and your fantasy setting is kind of like what happened, hundreds of thousands of years afterward. And, life is just kind of like everyday idyllic, typical sort of medieval fantasy mess, but with, exploration of like ancient ruins that may be technologically based or monsters that may be technologically based. Phantasy Star is probably one that I would call post-apocalypse. There is no actual role-playing game for that other than the video games themselves, but that's an example of the setting that I like for fantasy post-collapse. I don't know. What do you think?
I think Phantasy Star would make a good RPG.
I think it would be. I think it would too. I really do. Not so much the newer versions, but the older ones. Certainly the first few.
I think I've only played the one that was on the GameCube. That was meant to be played as an MMO-ish, but not any of the later or earlier ones. They were quite hard to get when they were current. So.
Yeah, definitely.
You were talking about the post-Roman period when I came in, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good example of a post-apocalypse, though. That's kind of a slow rolling political collapse. and it's not the Dark Ages period isn't quite as bad as people like to make out, but that's an advanced civilization kind of retreating and leaving knowledge and items and so on behind. So that's a good one. Or the bubonic plague. That's an apocalypse.
Yeah, Kip Marlowe mentions Hot War, which we played a few weeks ago.
Yeah, the mechanics not great. I think I'd play it again using something else if I was to run it again.
And XR33TK, hey, first time I've seen you on the channel, man. Good to see you. There's a whole set of rules and setting for Tunnels and Trolls is Post-Apoc. Really? See, I like Tunnels and Trolls. I would like to play more of it. I mean, it's obviously most of it is a solo game type stuff. But yeah, I have not actually seen the post-apocalyptic version of it. I would be curious about it. I think Tunnels and Trolls is pretty cool. I definitely want to get hardbacks of that stuff.
Do you mean Warriors of the Crypto Earth?
Is that what it's called?
I think that's what it's called. Or is that just someone's campaign? I'm not sure. It rang a bell. I went and looked.
Well, let's see. I've got some stuff we can share really quick.
Have we mentioned Rifts yet?
Yeah, Rifts. I don't even know if it's post-apocalyptic so much as it's just weird. You know. But yeah, from the gate, from the gear. Bleh. My mouth doesn't work this morning. I haven't enough caffeine. From the great Kevin Crawford, we do have Other Dust, which is definitely post-apocalyptic, and it's the setting it's actually the rule system I'm using for my Darwin's World game. Do we ever know what happened with this?
It's still coming out, as far as I know.
Yeah, because this is definitely post-apocalyptic.
I think it might actually be out.
Is it?
At the very least, at my local game shop, I see a Terminator game, a role playing game, not the miniatures game.
Okay.
Yeah, Terminator core rulebook, £31.45 apparently. Yeah, it's available.
That'd be one to try. There's this little ditty. Now, do we call this post-apocalyptic?
Kinda. So, I mean, I chose that time period for a reason. So we've just had the English Civil War, which killed a shitload of people, mostly men. And then there was the plague and the Great Fire of London. And then we add, the undead rising from the grave to all that. I mean, people at the time certainly thought, 1666 was the end of the world for various reasons, religious ones, all that stuff apart from the zombies and the Dutch invading. So, yeah-ish.
Okay. Oh, you ought to know this one. Silverlock mentions Hell on Earth. It's post-apocalyptic Deadlands.
Yeah, we played quite a lot of that and had a lot of fun with it. And my friend bequeathed me the books, so we'll probably get around to playing that at some point.
Okay. You recently did a video on this one. I own it, but I really haven't looked through it a whole lot. I've read through some of the adventures and stuff to get an idea about it, but to me, it feels a little bit Gamma World-y.
Yeah, it's definitely got more of an older school Gamma World feel. I mean, it's still fairly gonzo, but not quite as wacky. But compared to Dungeon Crawl Classics, it didn't grab me or make me enthusiastic the way DCC did.
Yeah, I don't like the RCCs.
Yeah.
Races class is just not something I like.
this has been a book that's always been kind of on my list of ones I wanted to pick up because I just feel this need to have some sort of post-apocalyptic game on my shelf.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you could have this one. It's got beautiful art.
And lots of it.
Yeah, it does have lots of it.
And some of it by my long-term collaborator, Brad McDevitt. He works for Goodman a lot. So,
yeah, I just did not find it as interesting, I guess. I mean, you could certainly crib ideas from it.
Yeah, there's just something missing. And it's hard to put your finger on quite what it is. I mean, if you're going to get one post-apocalyptic RPG, I guess besides any that I've written, I would actually suggest the Fallout RPG by Modiphius. I think it's their best implementation of their 2D20 system.
I think I actually have a copy of that. Show off. Let me do some scrolling here. I really probably should have gotten all these set up ahead of time. Yep, there it is.
Would require
organization. Foreboding.
Yeah, this is the actual Fallout role-playing game. It definitely looks beautiful, though. I'll say that much for it. I don't know how the actual game plays, but wow, they did a nice job on the graphics.
It's ironic, really, because Special was originally based on GURPS. So
yeah, I always thought that was funny.
Does this use their 2D20 system or no?
It does.
Yeah.
No, I think they use that system in a lot of games where it doesn't necessarily work. It's just because it's like their house system. But they do modify it in lots of different ways for different games, which is a good halfway house. But for Fallout specifically, I think it works really well.
If we're going to mention if we're going to mention Fallout, we also have to mention the basic experts, Atomic Punk. Is that right? Did I get the name right? Did I get the name wrong?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Atomic Punk, or I believe so. It's Atomic, at least.
Well, the system is called the Atomic System. Let me pull up his website for us, and we'll check it out real quick. Trying not to boomer this too much.
Yes, Punk. Plus I really want to commend him for the way he handles customer service. So for example, a while back I had bought his cow punchers, and I had pointed out like there was a problem with the way the formatting was for how it prints for the lining for along the spine, and to sort of make up for that, he went ahead and gave me a copy of the second edition of Atomic Punk as sort of a makeup for that.
Nice. Now, okay, I have the BX version of Atomic Punk in hardback. I don't have a PDF, unfortunately, to show anybody. But it is good. It is a love letter to Fallout, and there are a lot of stuff. There are a lot of things in it that you will recognize from the Fallout video game system. But of course, it's been subtly changed to avoid trademarks. But and that's fine. But you get the gist of what he was going for with it. I have not yet had the chance to pick up his second printing, which uses his new Atomic system, which is totally removed from OSR. It's something I do need to pick up. Actually, I think he was offering it for free earlier this week or last week. But it's one I can recommend. At the very least, if you get the old BX version, it's still going to be cross-compatible with all your old OSR stuff. You can always crib things from it, or you can use it. but it's definitely worth picking up. And yeah, Basic Expert's is a great guy. I love his stuff. He's a friend. You know, not much more I can say about it. I mean, good stuff is good stuff. Let's see. What do we got here? Love Fist. Hey, it's good to see you, man. You liked MCC? Okay.
You've gone to the list.
Low Life. Okay. I do have Low Life, actually. I might as well go ahead and pull that out so we can put that on the thing. I never really considered Low Life to be post-apocalypse, though. It's cyberpunk as far as I'm concerned. Oh, it's the alpha supplement. It's not actually the game. But I do have the game. But yeah, as you can see, this is not really... They don't even claim it to be, post-apocalypse. It's more cyberpunk. Unless we're thinking of a different Low Life.
I think it's a different Low Life.
Must be? Okay.
Yeah.
This is actually a post-apocalypse, believe it or not. Because Stars Without Number actually takes place in what was an evolved, interstellar system where, they had travel gates and all these other things. And all of a sudden, this catastrophic event called the Scream happens, and all the psychics basically died or went insane. And without them to power up the gates, travel between planets and stars and systems becomes a lot slower and harder to do. So basically, it's a period of lawlessness, rebuilding amongst the stars. And it's also, using one of my favorite systems. And it's a Kevin Crawford. I mean, take a drink if you're playing that drinking game.
It's too early to start drinking.
It is. And this is one I have a hardback of this, but I don't actually have a color PDF of this. But Mutant Future is one that I like to mention because it is OSR, and it does something kind of really interesting with the rules that a lot of systems don't. Scroll down to our hit point system, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Yeah, as you can see, it's using the basic, 6 systems. It's also got various races and stuff that you can play. That's got alignments, money. Where's our hit points? No, I think I passed it. Okay, so as you can see, right here, okay, like on mutant animals and replicants, just for an example, they don't do hit points the same way that most of the other games do for OSR. What happens is you get a D6 per point of con. Like, let's say you have a 10 con, you would throw 10 D6s, and that's your hit points. And that's all the hit points you're ever going to get.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to get any more. And their damages are pretty high to make that, feasible. But I do kind of like that because it gives your character a little bit more robustness right from the first level, and it makes leveling a little bit less important so much than just being able to survive,
Yeah.
This is one you definitely probably ought to review sometime, Grim.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's another good one. Did I actually display that, or did you guys not see that?
What you were just showing?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we saw that.
Okay, good. I was like, wait a minute. I didn't see it on the screen. I'm sorry, I'm having a moment. I haven't had enough caffeine today. Hello, Lord Thoth. Good to see you. Morkborg. Well, I don't know if I'd call that one post-apocalyptic or not. I'd say it's mid-fall, maybe.
Yeah, because it has that explicit mechanic that the world is going to end in the near future, and so does Cyborg, though the sting is kind of taken out of Cyborg by the fact that it's all a simulation anyway. Spoilers. Yeah, there's a disjunct between Morkborg and its idea of this apocalypse, because clearly it's setting itself up for campaign play, but it's so simplistic and characters are so fragile that I think it'd be very hard to get a campaign out of it that would take you to the end of the world. So yeah, a bit odd.
Yeah. Judge Dredd, the TTRPG.
Yeah, well, it's post several apocalypses. So there was the Third World War after President Booth goes insane and nukes everywhere. Then the mega cities kind of survive and are founded. But then there's a war between Megacity 1 and East Meg 1, which nukes both of them. Several plagues, Necropolis, Blockmania as part of the Apocalypse War, really, but yeah, a problem by itself. There was a robot uprising. Yeah, it's constantly being apocalypsed. So, I've played the old Games Workshop version, the D20 version. I haven't played the Mongoose Traveler version.
There is a post-apocalypse Judge Dredd kind of like setting for Darwin's World as well, which spoilers, I mean you're playing that game, so you'll probably find this eventually. So I guess it's not that big of a spoiler, but and of course obviously you could look it up on the net if you really wanted to know about it. But let me dig it up. Yeah. Here it is. It's like I really need like extra people to do all these things for me. But okay, yeah. Metropolis Row from Darwin's World is kind of the they call it humanity in a bottle, and that is because Darwin's World is already post-apocalypse. The world collapsed. Centuries have gone by. People are rebuilding. The outside world is hell. But these cities that are domed exist, wherein people survive the collapse. They still have power. They still have, working vehicles. They still have, police and everything else. I mean, yes, their cities and stuff are falling apart little by little, but it's almost kind of more of an urban blight and less of a, full-on collapse. It is basically like Judge Dredd, including being the ability to play, their police force and everything else. But yeah, it's it's a neat little add-on. I thought that Dominic put into his game. Obviously, you guys have not discovered one of these dome cities yet, but they do exist, and so yeah, I guess I would definitely put Judge Dredd in the post-apocalyptic setting. I have not played the TTRPG. You would know more about this than I would. There was a Rogue Trooper RPG, was there not?
No. They were thinking about doing one and then had me write a D20 modern basic conversion, which they put in their in-house magazine. That's as close as we got to Rogue Trooper RPG. There was a board game.
But Rogue Trooper is post-apocalypse.
Well, it's an ongoing apocalyptic war that has completely ruined a planet called New Earth. But
yeah, as you can see, their graveyard of bone cities. Yeah, Metropolis Row is right here, but they also have like Sigma Tau, Phi, Lam. They had all these domed cities all along this area around the Kansas, St. Louis area, and they only have They only have like the setup for Row. But I mean, effectively, I guess I could make my own stories, based around all the other dome cities.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, those exist. Let's see, Gamma Troll World. Okay. Oh, okay, Silver. Like Low Life: The Rise of the Lowly. Okay, I'm gonna have to check that one out. I will have to look that up. Do we prefer Strangers in a Strange Land conceits, pod people waking up in the year 2436, or PCs of natives of the post-collapse society? I lead towards the former, but I'm not entirely sure why. I do too. I enjoyed Morrow Project, and one of the reasons I tend to prefer, my own Darwin's World game, the reason why I had everybody as sleepers waking up in the post-apocalyptic future is because it feels too hard as a GM to start a brand new campaign and try to get across to everybody the feeling of being, tribal, and trying to explain things that, we would know about. Because I think inherently, your metagaming knowledge, your player metagaming knowledge is going to kind of come into play unless you just really actively work to shut it out. But like if I describe like a storefront, as a great building of steel or a great, hut of steel and glass, with strange lettering on the front, you kind of see what I'm saying?
Best to kind of into it.
Huh? Sorry, what?
Oh, I said best to kind of throw them into it and effectively, by proxy of they're kind of awakening fresh to the world. It's best to let them naturally come to that conclusion of we have to band together.
Yeah, and I think it helps in a lot of games if there's a mechanism by which you can throw people in without them necessarily knowing a lot about the game world. You avoid the info dump. Mm-hmm. You can learn about the world as you're going along. Which is a problem in a lot of games with interesting settings. There's just too much to grasp straight away.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I chose to run the Darwin's World game as a sleepers campaign, because, you're already familiar with a lot of the concepts and things that we have and what's left over, but there's still a lot of alien things. The fact that people slept through dynamic ages of technological growth means that there's still some wonder out there for your character. Ray guns, androids, stuff like that. So there's still that sense of wonder, but at the same time, if I tell you, that you see like an old stop sign, you're going to know what an old stop sign is.
Yeah.
Versus if you're a tribal character from Darwin's World and I describe a stop sign to you, then I have to tell you there's a strange, octagonal chunk of metal, twisted and sitting up out of the earth with strange red and white symbols on it that you don't recognize. And then have this PCs just try to sit there for an hour, try to figure out what I'm saying by description. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think this kind of dense information problem is part of the reason the Genesis didn't do better, because it's perfectly adequate system, great game, fantastic art, but there's so much depth to the world. It's not something you can easily just pick up and play.
Mm-hmm. something that works with Stephen King's The Stand would be awesome. Yeah, The Stand is such a recent collapse setting. It's almost kind of like almost a zombie apocalypse, in my opinion, just because it's like not so much time has gone by since the world fell that you can still have people trying to pick over and know where all the good places to pick over will be.
I think a gritty-ish, modern-ish system would work for a lot of these kind of settings, including The Stand. I mean, there is weird bits of magic to it here and there, but not for most people, really. Mm-hmm. So something like Twilight 2000 would probably work. I'll be interested to see what the Walking Dead game turns out to be like.
Yeah, me too. Now there is a D20 post-apocalypse system based on D20 Modern. That was actually a pretty good supplement. I have to admit, is probably one of my favorites, along with D20 Future, which is my absolute favorite. But the fact that they did actually blend a little bit of magic into their post-apocalypse kind of made it work. And here's an interesting question. If you have a post-apocalypse setting, how much of the supernatural can be included before it kind of starts to break down the reality?
See, I don't like adding many, if any, supernatural elements. I mean, people can believe all kinds of weird and stupid things, and it might have a placebo effect. But I'm not a fan. Psionics are something we kind of let go, I suppose, because they're quite limited. And you do find the idea of psionics limited to mutations in a lot of the source material, like A Boy and His Dog and things like that. And there's weird cryptids and stuff in Fallout, but they all have explanations. I don't know. I'm not really a fan.
Okay. So that kind of answers a little bit.
I suppose it all ultimately depends, like how far into the sort of post-apocalypse you want to be. Do you want to have it be everything's kind of falling down around you now, or it's been a while? In which case, that sort of lets you play with that more, I think.
Yeah, and some settings tie technology to magic. So if technology goes away, magic rises, and vice versa. There was an RPG of Ralph Bakshi's Wizards, so it's on topic. But in Wizards, the apocalypse leads to the re-rise and re-emergence of like goblins, trolls, magic, all of that sort of thing.
That's common in a lot of post-apocalypses, though. Thundar the Barbarian had magic coming back. I wouldn't say Shadowrun is post-apocalyptic, but the weird fact that magic came back so suddenly mixed with the technology almost makes it that way.
Yeah. I think this is sort of a problem of the post-apocalypse as a genre, is that it is so wide, so nebulous and kind of hard to clearly define because it's been used so many ways.
Yeah, and that's kind of I think that's one of the strengths of post-apocalyptic settings is the fact that, there really aren't any hard and fast rules as to how to run a post-apocalypse. For example, again, I'm going to go back to Phantasy Star because I'll be honest, Phantasy Star was such a big impact on a lot of my early role-playing gaming stuff that I've actually carried it through to modern day, and I still use elements of it. But the fact that Phantasy Star was a post-apocalyptic role-playing game, and you had mages who could actually cast magic, but you also had people who had psionic powers. So you had elements of both. How magic managed to rise, I don't remember, or how it occurred, but people had psionics. There were androids and robots, so there was technology. People had guns. People had power swords, power armor. There were robot enemies. There were magic enemies. There were mutant enemies. and the settings were anywhere from crazy desert landscapes to ruined cities and ruined dungeon type environments. It was almost whimsical, but it was kind of fun the way it was all put together. Which I guess it's kind of weird to associate fun with a post-apocalypse. Which I guess kind of leads me to another question: how horrible should your post-apocalypse be?
I mean, I think that depends again, doesn't it? What you're in it for, whether you're in it for the grim and gritty sort of survival, or whether you have a more sort of woohoo sort of approach to the whole thing. Is it giant ants and people with televisions for heads, or is it something else?
Yeah, Kit Marlowe is you're quoting Arthur C. Clarke, which is and the quote is any
sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Mm-hmm. And any sufficiently advanced magic is indistinguishable from science. Yeah, there is that element of losing your knowledge and stuff in a post-apocalypse. It could be that I've heard in more than one system magic described as a science. Just a way of arranging symbols and letters and words and stuff to actually make effects happen.
I think in Mutant Crawl Classics, the closest thing to a magic user in that is someone who is bonded with a surviving AI, and all the magic is accomplished through nanites and programming and stuff like that left over.
Yeah. Oh, and I would be remiss if I did not mention RPG Pundit's World of the Last Sun, which is effectively a post-apocalyptic setting as well. Because in that place, there's literally one planet that everybody lives on, and it was all gathered up by a machine, and people and AI runs everything, and all your magical effects are created by nanomachines. And that setting is kind of whimsical, as he calls it. He calls it Gonzo. And say what you will. I thought it was a neat setting. It was a neat idea. I like it. I would run it. Certainly, he has gotten a lot of mileage out of it. I don't know. Have you guys messed with it much?
No. I was just flipping through Barbarians of the Aftermath, actually.
I haven't heard of Barbarians of the Aftermath.
So it's the same as Barbarians of Lemuria in terms of system, or at least broadly. But it's non-specific, so it's more like building your own future apocalypse.
Mm. Ironcaster, were you going to say something?
Oh, just I have a World of the Last Sun, but I've yet to really get a chance to actually run anything and do anything with it properly. Just go through.
Yeah, it's a neat setting. It's a neat idea. I guess you'd have to call Venger Satanas' Chalt stuff kind of post-apocalyptic too. It's a weird fantasy Gonzo apocalypse. Or what? Or am I wrong on that? Or
I think it's just whatever takes Venger's fancy that 5 minutes.
He had just enough time to write it down on paper.
Yeah. Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but
ADHD, the setting.
Well, admittedly, as bad as that sounds, that's always kind of how I viewed early Gamma World to be. You know what I mean?
Is paranoia post-apocalypse? Because it is, but is it?
I'd say it falls into that same Judge Dredd, kind of humanity in a bottle type setting, where
so dystopian, but not post-apocalyptic per se, because you're not fighting for survival, even though you're going to die very quickly and often. But
yeah, it's like I would call that. I'm probably going to coin a term. I would call it an encapsulated post-apocalypse, because it literally is. I mean, it's your post-apocalypse has happened all around you, but you're kind of largely unaware of it because you're in your own little bubble. And there's a few movies that are like that as well. I don't know what you would call Zardoz, but that's probably definitely post-apocalyptic.
Yeah,
but it's so weird.
If Venger was able to direct a movie,
yeah, Sean Connery in a red thong. I mean, hey,
it's pretty apocalyptic and nightmarish.
It certainly is. Okay. Well, we've covered a lot of stuff about the post-apocalyptic settings and genres. Is there anything in particular that we need to discuss for as far as mechanics or?
Well, obviously, you need survival mechanics of some kind. And you need to create a sense of scarcity.
Right.
Which is important in any sort of survival scenario or game, I think.
Yeah. And honestly, one of the hardest parts of running anything that is post-apocalyptic, and most of y'all out there are either you're probably going to totally agree with me or you're going to totally disagree with me on this, is the exchange of goods for services. And that is, I mean, how ridiculous is paying for stuff in bottle caps or pieces of nuclear reactors, or as we do in Darwin's World with corium. See if I can find that thing. Or are you going to have to create a barter system?
Yeah, in which case you need a rough idea of what stuff's worth in some kind of other abstract way, like money, in order to work out fair exchanges. I did wonder if you saw that when I sent it to you.
I love that. The best I can do is 5 corium.
I mean,
You cut out.
Possibly forever.
Yeah, sounds like his microphone just went poof.
All connection.
Yeah. But yeah, that's actually one of the harder things to do is figuring out how much goods and services are going to cost. I mean, in a fantasy role-playing game, it's easy because everybody has a coinage, whether it's copper or whatever. And arguably, Dark Sun is post-apocalyptic in its own way, or it's an ongoing apocalypse.
Yeah.
And they don't use, and it's a metal poor planet, so they have to use like ceramic pieces as their stuff. Oh, yeah, he did go.
Lame.
He'll be back. Hey, I had connection issues last week too, so I sympathize.
An interesting sort of barter point is food.
Yes.
So like in Legend of the Five Rings, the monetary system is or was based on the koku, which is like 180 liters of rice, I think, something like that.
Yeah, the amount of rice you needed to survive on.
Yeah, and then coinage was derived from that. So that can be a way to look at it. There's a thing we do over here in the UK to measure inflation and other issues. So there's a cheap chocolate bar called the Freddo. And so there's a Freddo index. How many Freddos could you buy for £1 in this year, that year, the other? So it's kind of you could do an exchange called the Freddo quite easily as a unit of value.
I'm reminded of an example in a recent game that I've been playing, which I'm not going to cite on air just because it would probably get YouTube to take me down. But I might tell you about it privately. The But yeah, the measure of something is pretty much what stuff is worth, and that's always the tough part of figuring out anything, especially in a post-apocalyptic game. Because not everything is going to be on a coinage basis, especially if you're dealing with tribes that have no use for coins.
Yeah, and nobody's really that interested in going into the minutiae of what good is worth how much extra here can I buy cheaply in this location and transport it to that location. Even the most hardcore traveler players I knew couldn't be bothered with that, even when they were running as traders with trading vessels.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
When I ran my Stars Without Number campaign last summer, the characters decided that they were going to get into merchanting, so I had to pick up all the merchanting books for Stars Without Number, which is like Sons of Gold, I think. And it got to be just grueling to have to figure out what commodities were worth and how much they could exchange and everything. And I mean, the characters amassed quite a bit of wealth and cargo space, but at the same time, my biggest question to them kept on being, well, what's your end game with all this? You have all this money. Now what? Now what? Now what? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
You got so much money. And sometimes I often wonder if players even know why they are amassing so much wealth. You know what I mean? Is it weird?
Yeah.
I mean,
to buy better magical items.
Yeah. With a post-apocalyptic setting, it makes more sense. You're accumulating wealth because wealth means survival. Because it enables you to buy the stuff that you need, whether it's parts for the generator that you need to keep the lights working in your shelter, or water for what you need. In that way, I think post-apocalyptic settings are better than the medieval fantasy type stuff. Which,
I mean, the pickings are so slim in post-apocalyptic settings as well that it doesn't get out of hand too quickly unless you want it to.
Yeah, the GM definitely has better control over what happens and how much players get access to.
Yeah, but I think abstract currency is so useful. It would emerge in one way or another. I mean, you've got those trading caravans in our current game, right? They probably use some sort of medium of exchange, because even though they all operate as independent traders, they also operate as a collective, and you want to be able to buy or sell from one trader and then buy or sell to another, without necessarily lugging all the goods back and forth. So some kind of promissory note, or the corium. I don't personally think the corium makes much sense because you wouldn't want to go near it. But if there was something would emerge, promissory notes, a token of some kind, something.
Jack Fetch, hey, first time seeing you here, man. Thank you for showing up. Considered running a Mutants and Masterminds game based on Batman No Man's Land. I am not familiar with Batman No Man's Land, to be honest, but I am familiar with Mutants and Masterminds, the superhero role-playing game. That is an interesting idea for a post-apocalypse. It's a superheroic post-apocalypse. The closest...
There was that one where you play supervillains after all the heroes have been killed in an alien invasion. Can never remember what it's called, but
I can't remember what it's called, but I do remember that it was it's almost kind of weird, because it's like your villains really aren't villains anymore at that point.
Yeah.
But
same thing in the comic book series Wanted. The villains run the world, having wiped out all the heroes, but you have to root for one set of villains over another. So
yeah, stuff like that's never, I don't know. However, I do have a source I can cite with this one. Let me pull it up and get your drinking glasses ready.
Necessary Evil. It was called Necessary Evil.
Ah, yeah. Godbound is kind of, Godbound fits that mode. The reason is because you are literally playing a demigod in a world that has fallen, and it is a Kevin Crawford game. Guess what? But yeah, your characters pretty much are the equivalent of superheroes because they have powers that are so far above that of normal people that it's just incredible. And this is still one I want to run for you one day, Grim. But yeah, the characters, even from level 1, are just so over the top, super powerful. There is technology in Godbound. There is, there is a sense of the world has fallen. You're brand new demigods trying to make your way to becoming greater gods and things like that, because basically the gods fell because men tried to create gods, and the world kind of like said no. I mean, just to put it in a nutshell, it's more complicated than that, but yeah, you're fledgling, you're basically like super duper fledgling superheroes, and you're actually able to make changes, and part of the whole impetus for the game is to grow your religion, as it were, or your cult, and thereby increase your power base. And as more people flock to your worship, I suppose you could call it, the more powerful your character can become, to eventually become either a god in their own right, or challenge and overthrow the things that are calling themselves gods. But that is a post-apocalyptic / superhero style role-playing type thing. Which brings up, I guess I have to bring up Exalted. I don't have a lot of experience with Exalted, but is it post-apocalyptic?
I have some. Kind of. The Solar and the Lunar Exalted did rule in presumably somewhat enlightened time with all kinds of powerful magitech and so on. And then the Dragon-Blooded rose up against them and overthrew them and killed most of them. So kind of, yeah. That would make a good LARP, or I could see making a version of my Colony Moon game based on the same sort of premise. Trying to survive as everything goes wrong around you. There was a good science fiction book called, I think it's called Flood, actually, where some of the super rich, foreseeing the world drowning, bought up a bunch of luxury liners, but it goes horribly wrong for them over time as they break down, and the less rich people who have to crew the thing turn on them and so on. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen something similar in a different, more tongue-in-cheek vein, where basically a bunch of super rich people bought an island, but unfortunately, because they were, basically bidding on the lowest thing, is like, their island couldn't support itself and eventually started to sink and crater.
Mm.
But yeah. I honestly think you could turn any setting into a post-apocalyptic setting. It just depends on the world events that happen. There was an older game. Oh gosh, I don't know if you'd call Shadow of the Demon Lord a post-apocalypse or not.
Kind of,
because there's a definite end. But that was the other one, Midnight. Midnight was probably, I would consider to be kind of a post-apocalypse, because basically it's like evil wins, and now you must survive, the new order. I don't know. Atlas Shrugged the TTRPG, not coming to a Kickstarter. Yeah, I don't see that one. Yeah.
BioShock did well. Several people have done conversions of that. I'm one of them. I did a TTRPG conversion of BioShock. other people have. But yeah, so end all libertarian paradises.
Yeah. I loved BioShock. The first one was just amazing. The second one was pretty good too. After that, it's like, nah. But
I did like the one in the Flying City as well.
You did? I did not.
I did.
But
yeah.
Oh,
maybe it's my British perspective on Americana.
I think that one lost the plot somewhere.
Oh yeah, it did a bit. It didn't stick the landing, but the style and the visuals and little touches that it had, like the barbershop quartet singing the modern song that slipped through from a parallel universe, things like that I liked. Yeah.
Coming soon to a game store near you, Westworld, the role-playing game. Try to survive in the theme park where everything went wrong.
It was Dream Park, was that? I think there was an RPG of that. Artel Zorian, in fact, I think.
Yeah, Dream Park. It was cyberpunk based.
Or Interlock, I think they called it then.
Was it?
I think it was straight cyberpunk, but it was. Yeah. It wasn't Mechton.
Yeah, I owned it. I just don't have my copy handy. I need to actually find all my old cyberpunk stuff because I've got it stored away,
stashed against the apocalypse.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm
at least we'll be able to play cyberpunk.
Hey,
yeah.
If the digital gods take everything away, if it's all empty, at least I'm all backed up on hard copy. So, which means buy your hard copies, kids. All right. Well, do we have anything else to talk about as far as apocalypse go? Because I mean, it's actually a really big topic. But
there's one thing that's always struck me about post-apocalyptic games, RPG specifically, right? Mad Max is hugely popular.
Yeah.
We've never really had a Mad Max RPG, and anyone that tries to do a kind of Mad Max style game loses the kind of point. Because you look at something like Car Wars or even Gaslands or Dark Future, it's all way too technological, and they're talking about different companies and Car Wars as sport, not no one ever does the kind of straightforward Mad Max version. It's kind of curious. Don't really know why.
I always thought of Car Wars as being more Mad Max, and then I actually started reading the source material, and it's kind of like, oh, it's not like that at all.
No, no.
And Jack Fetch, thank you for mentioning Free League's Alpha Lab, because I almost forgot After the Bomb from Palladium.
Which is post-apocalyptic TMNT.
Yes, it is. It is post-apocalyptic TMNT. And you could probably still get it. I don't know. It's probably worth a whole lot of money now. I have it somewhere. But yeah, I don't know how ridiculous an actual Mad Max post-apocalypse really is. The fact that, having to rely upon gasoline for everything. And as we discovered, as I discovered in Darwin's World, it's like, yeah, gasoline doesn't last all that long.
There's always biodiesel.
Yeah.
And you can turn pig shit and chicken shit into fuel that will run on robust engines. So, as they did in the film Battle Truck.
And as they did in Mad Max 3.
Yep.
Rip Tina Turner. Yeah, definitely there's a lot of, and if you're looking for source material to run post-apocalyptic games on, there's tons of it out there. I mean, literally go back to the 1980s and check out just about anything from from the action movie genres of the 80s, because back in the 80s we were in the Cold War and we were pretty sure that the nukes were going to drop any day, and so a lot of our
super popular. So there were a lot of ripoffs.
Oh God, yeah. Especially in Italy, there were lots of Road Warrior / ripoffs, like the Bronx Executioner and all those other things.
Yeah, if you like those kind of films, there's a YouTube channel called Good Bad Flicks, and he has a major stonk on for those kind of rip-off post-apocalyptic cheesy movies. So he often reviews them. Like, he'll go over the plot and so on. So you can find a lot of that kind of shit on his channel.
Definitely, I do. I own a lot of those too. I'm serious. It's like my Blu-ray shelf is pretty much jam packed with 80s movies because it's just that's what I grew up watching. I mean, that was my babysitter. Parents aren't home. Have some, go to the video rental store, rent some VHS tapes, or put on some cable TV. And what's on? Bad Italian post-apocalyptic movies or whatever. That stuff is that's gold. I mean, even if as cheesy as it is, it's almost kind of believable in a sense.
Did you mention Fist of the North Star as post-apocalyptic before I joined?
I did not, and I should. And that's something I've never seen done successfully in a role-playing game. Fist of the North Star is definitely post-apocalyptic. In fact, at the beginning of the series, they say that the apocalypse happened in 1990X, which obviously we managed to get past that. But they were fully expecting a nuclear war. And in the wastelands, people would be surviving for water and everything. It was largely influenced by Mad Max. But the whole mystic martial arts part of it, I always thought was really, really special. Because guns apparently are very scarce. So most people have to resort to, torsion weaponry like crossbows and bows, or thrown weaponry like spears, or just regular, swords and things to cut each other up with.
Yeah, decent martial arts systems are hard to come by anyway.
They really are. You either end up getting so complex that it becomes unplayable, or you end up simplifying it to the point where it's like, well, what's the point of this?
Yeah, Street Fighter was okay.
It was okay. Yeah,
surprisingly. Weapons of the Gods, people used to be hyped about, but I think it's too complicated.
Yeah,
there's got to be a way to do it. I will think about it.
there is a post-apocalyptic game out there that is kind of semi-based on Fist of the North Star. Damn, if I can remember what it is. I actually own it, which is the bad thing. But it does exist. It's on Drive-Thru RPG. It just went into hardback, and it is on my wish list. Give me a couple of moments. Talk while I look it up really quick, because it's worth finding.
I just saw Kit mention that his foster brother once had a van that ran on cooking oil. You could smell him coming a mile away, the smell of the chip shop. They never mentioned that in these various post-apocalyptic games. I saw a thing recently about running aeroplanes on pig fat, which doesn't strike me as particularly environmentally friendly. But if airports smell of bacon, they might be more popular. You never know. So there's all kinds of weird things people use as fuel. Why not?
Oh, there are definitely some post-apocalyptic things on my wish list that I would like to get. Like there's Barbarians of Ruined Earth. Not heard of that one, I guess?
Nope.
Yep, there's Barbarians of Ruined Earth. Going down my list. Sorry for the silence. There's Delta World. That is another one that's probably worth checking out. I have not got it yet, but these are on my wish list of things to buy as soon as I actually make some money. By the way, if you want to help me out with that, and maybe you want your comment highlighted, by all means, please send a super chat. I'd be very grateful if you do.
I'm looking through my shelves for something to.
I don't know about Forbidden Lands. What do you think about Forbidden Lands?
Lots of people describe it as post-apocalyptic. I've flicked through the book once. I need to read it again to review it. So I can't really say yet.
There's Hubris, the world of visceral adventure for DCC RPG. I don't know if it is necessarily post-apocalyptic or not. Oh my gosh, I've got a lot of DCC stuff on here.
Numenera is technically post-apocalypse, I suppose. Many post-apocalypses.
Is it that massive, huge, thick, super-duper book from Monty Cook?
Yes.
Jesus.
Not the biggest book he's ever done, but pretty big. Basis of the cipher system, which is now used for all sorts.
Yep. I apologize for not being set up a little bit better than this, folks. It's just, yeah. Grim and I got to talking shop before the show started, and I was kind of like, oh my God, wait a minute, we've got to do a show.
Yeah.
There's the Ruin D100 system from Feral Gamers Incorporated. I have not played that one yet. I want to.
Yeah, post-apocalypse isn't particularly well represented on my shelves, to be honest.
Oh, we got to beef that up, man. You got to get those numbers up. Rookie numbers.
I think it's because I tend to improvise using existing systems. Like for the longest time, we used to run post-apocalyptic games using Blood, both the original edition and the one that I made, just because it's so visceral and nasty that it really made you careful and cautious when you were doing things. Oh, God, Apocalypse World. We haven't mentioned that.
What the heck is that one about?
Nothing in particular. It's more of a general rule set that spends most of its time lecturing you on how to play. So it's really more of a philosophical treatise than an actual game.
What use is that?
Well, exactly. I think there is something recoverable from the system, but I'm not a fan of Apocalypse World or Powered by the Apocalypse.
All right. If I can't find this thing in the next couple of seconds, I guess I'm going to have to just forego it. Maybe highlight it for later. But it just came out.
I was going to say, of course, there's my own game, 45 Psychobilly Retropocalypse.
Yeah, why don't you talk about that one real quick?
So World War II never stopped. The Allies decided, don't like those communists much, and we've got the A-bomb, so let's attack them as well. But also a bunch of Nazis survived, and they also cracked the bomb. But because it was still like early days, plane dropped A-bombs, everyone kind of nuked themselves to the point where they couldn't fight anymore before destroying the entire world. But all the governments broke down, and it's wacky Fallout-style radiation, so, giant ants and so on. And yeah, you play people surviving in various places in that world. So there's like a giant Nazi airship city, which the Fifth Reich operates out of. The Russians have invaded Alaska. There's a place called Science City Zero, which is like the one proper high-tech enclave left. Roller derby has become a massive national sport in the States, but it's played more like rollerball. Just a load of weird and wacky 50s tropes, really.
And this is it. Tian Shang, Lone Wolf Fists from Five Emperors Games. There is a... this is pretty much the only game that they do. There is quite a few free products from them.
Oh, yeah. They sent me a copy of that to review, but it was on PDF, so I forgot about it.
Yeah. They just released the hardcover black and white book for $55. I have the PDF. I need to get into it a little bit more. But yeah, basically the guy who wrote this is a Fist of the North Star fan, and he kind of envisioned Lone Wolf Fists as being a Fists of the North Star homage. And yeah, like he says, rules that allow you and encourage you to punch a tank in half, battle a scorpion demon, or fight an entire army with your bare hands. This is something I really need to get into more and figure out how it works and actually run it, because me being such a huge Fist of the North Star fan, that's my jam. Did I actually show it off, or did it cancel out?
I don't know. I was looking elsewhere.
Okay.
I'm guessing you didn't show it.
I'm guessing I didn't. Okay, hang on. Let's try again. There we go. Okay, yeah. Tianshang, Lone Wolf Fists, Five Emperors game. Yeah, the PDF is expensive. It's $20, but it's huge. It's like 200, 300 pages. And yeah, they just got their hardcover black and white book, which is what I have been waiting for. So as soon as I get a little bit of scratch together, hint, hint, I'm probably going to pick up the hardback of this and go through it, review it, and try to run it. And yeah, like I said, they have other things here too. They have the All Above Heaven character sheet. They have Lone Wolf Fists Quick Start. So if you want to see what the game is about, you can definitely, jump in and see that. And yeah, apparently they have a YouTube channel with nerdy guys on it. Hey, what can I say? But there you go. Forbidden Lands premise is rebuilding the world after the Red Mist. In fact, the mechanics are based on base building, so in the way of more post-apocalypse. Okay, so yeah, there you go. So yeah, as it turns out, there is a lot of post-apocalyptic games out there, probably more so than you realize at first. And I don't know if people are necessarily tired of the fantasy genre. But I happen to just think that the post-apocalyptic genre really offers more, just because the fantasy genre in general, although it does offer opportunities to kind of like start your own, village, kingdom, castle, etc., and all that stuff with the form of domain play, it's less so, I think, than post-apocalypse, where you're literally having to survive. So you have to build a shelter, you have to get working supplies, you have to get water, food, and everything else. And then you have to find people to stock it with who can keep your stuff running. So in a sense, it's a little bit more ground level. And I think that kind of thing appeals to people who are fans of any kind of, like survival crafting game type, role-playing or computer game systems, things like 7 Days to Die, Minecraft, Terraria, things like that, I don't know. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. Yes, no, maybe so?
Maybe. I don't know. Ask the audience.
What do you think, audience? Am I wrong? Am I right?
Did we discuss Other Dust?
Yes, we did talk about. Hey, Alex, we did talk about Other Dust a bit. Yeah, like I said, Other Dust is another Kevin Crawford game, and yes, take a drink. It is definitely post-apocalyptic, but something to think about too is Other Dust is basically it is stars without numbers, because it takes place in the same universe. And in fact, what the Other Dust background is you were planet side when the universe collapsed and no more ships were coming, and nanotechnology and swarms and things got out of hand and caused an apocalypse. And you're basically trying to survive in that environment. I like Other Dust as a setting on its own, But currently, I'm just using it as a rule system to run Darwin's World, which, I mean, maybe it's because I helped work on it a little bit, but I just happen to like it as a system the best because it seems to encapsulate all the best parts of post-apocalyptic role-playing game. It's got true horror. It has a couple of supernatural elements. And it's a little bit more realistic in the fact that mutations don't, make you into some cutesy, bug person or something. They give you cancer. It's mutations and all that shouldn't be cute and funny and all that. Mutations should be kind of horrible. That should be something you should want to avoid. You should want to avoid having your genetics twisted, warped, and spliced and messed with like so much Play-Doh.
Yeah, it's not always an extra boob. Sometimes it's Kuato.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. And Kit Marlowe says, yeah, survival is a different trope from recovery. I don't think so. I think one goes in hand with the other, because while you're trying to survive, you're also kind of trying to recover, because part of survival, like I said, means building a shelter, making sure it's got power, making sure it's stocked with food, making sure it's stocked with water, and then figuring out what your next turn is. I mean, if you're just surviving, then it's pretty much just like, okay, we're just wandering from place to place, trying to scav. And that's how we're surviving.
Yeah. It's as I've gotten older, I've found that in both computer games and role-playing games, I'm much more into the building idea, or the thought of having an impact on the game world, of building something, of settling somewhere, of making a difference in the game world. I don't know whether is just because I'm getting older or my tastes have changed. But, there's a lot to be said for the wandering swordsman fighting the problem of the week sort of style of gaming as well. But it's just the idea of building something these days appeals to me more. Yeah.
And I guess it's the difference between Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. Fallout 3, you were pretty much just a wandering survivor. Fallout 4, you were actually building settlements and things like that. Now, I did like that a lot. I did too. I just didn't like having Preston calling me every 5 minutes. Your settlement's being attacked. Well, they can't handle it on their own. I put like 52 turrets out there with rocket launchers and shit on there and a full wall. If they can't survive, then clearly I did something wrong.
Yeah. It's evolution in action. They'll either survive or they won't.
Yeah. Which kind of, I don't know. I like the idea of their Nuka World thing where you could run the gangs and take down the settlements, but I think it was kind of poorly implemented. And that's something I have not seen in people play too much in their survival role-playing games, is playing actual marauders and raiders that actively work to destroy and subvert and pillage and plunder. It just doesn't seem to be something that players gravitate towards.
Yeah, for whatever reason. For all the horror stories, you don't get a lot of evil campaigns and evil player characters very often. In some ways, that's a shame, because it's fun to see things from the other side sometimes. Yeah.
There is a slight problem I wanted to discuss really quick, and it's come up with me recently, but it's probably, I'm not the only one. A lot of people, when they run post-apocalyptic stuff, especially if they're older gamers, they've kind of come from that Gamma World zany weird background of, like, ooh,
yeah.
And like when I try to run Darwin's World, I try to run it a little bit more realistically, which includes, unfortunately, the more brutal aspects of it. The fact that people will treat each other like property, or they'll dehumanize them and do horrible things to each other because they can, because there's nothing to stop them. And it becomes a little harder to do that when you have a player who wants to play a character that is very, I hate to say the word wacky, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hope you're not saying something about our characters in the game, because I don't think it's kind of a little bit sounds like you're talking about Simon, but I don't think he's playing it wacky. I think he's playing it as a marginalized asshole who sees this new world order as an opportunity to do whatever he wants. Really, I think that's that's how I'd interpret it. But I am notoriously generous with players.
Well, and I'm not picking on Simon. I love Simon. Simon's a good guy, and I do like his character. It's just it becomes hard to maintain that tone of, hey, this is real. This is bad. These are real people. Actual people are being hurt by things that you do. When you got somebody running around every 5 minutes yelling, "I want a sex bot."
Well, it's given us our goal, so that's something.
Yeah, I'll give it.
I mean, his character probably has a healthier attitude that's more tooled towards long-term survival in the post-apocalypse than me or Kit.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he became a crispy critter and he kind of came out of it still kind of unfazed.
Yeah.
I don't know. Incidentally, I'm really glad you stopped me when you did on the the slavery situation. I was so certain that you guys were going to attack those slavers. I was so certain you guys were.
You made special mention that there were quite a lot of them. So,
well,
three of us against a whole mob? No, I don't think so.
You might have survived. I mean, I think you might have made it, but my thought afterward was kind of like, okay, I've made these slavers out to be as horrible human beings or horrible people as possible. So I kind of expect the players to take the bait and attack them. And I fully expect them to win. But the flip side of that is now you have 80 people that you have to account for, take care of, and figure out what to do with.
Yeah. Well, I figured there were too many of them, and they were well armed, and at least one of them was a big, dangerous mutant, and at least we could buy and free a few of them, and some of them would be bought and incorporated into that settlement where life wasn't that bad compared to everywhere else. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you do what you can.
Yeah, and I thought that was kind of a more mature way of handling it. My feeling is like, the typical heroic player who plays a post-apocalyptic role-playing game would see the slavers and be like, uh-oh, no. Because I mean, like, how many times did we play Fallout 3 and we got to the slavers and decide these people all need to die, especially after you saw that they had child slaves and stuff. I mean, just putting it out there, but that's what I like about a lot of these things is you can kind of pose moral quandaries in a way that you could kind of just see how people are going to react to it in a more realistic way, because it's kind of like with a post-apocalyptic setting, it's like I think you feel like you have more to lose than you do like in a fantasy setting, because I think fantasy settings are somewhat more insulated because of the prevalence of magic and magical healing and magical resurrection and all this other stuff. So people feel more invincible.
I think role-playing games, well, not all of them, but role-playing games are better suited to those kind of moral dilemmas than computer games are, because computer games, I exaggerate, but only a small amount. They tend to present you with things like choice A: set fire to this box of kittens. Choice B: rescue this busload of nuns. It's not really any kind of meaningful choice other than maybe you're going for the trophy for playing the ultimate evil playthrough,
Yeah.
Whereas there's room for nuance in tabletop games. Though I have a hard time running not Warhammer, but Warhammer 40,000 setting games specifically, because there is no room for moral grey areas in the minds of anyone who's playing anything from the Imperium.
No.
So
destroy the Xenos.
Well, I ran this game where they found a Golden Age starship that had a bunch of intact STCs, and the artificial intelligence was still operating, and it was objectively making life better for people within this system. Nope, burn it.
Yeah. And I guess you could actually run your post-apocalyptic game the same way. I mean, certainly a lot of film tropes revolve around ultra charismatic leaders who have formed communities or tribes or armies based not only on their personality, but sometimes on religion. Take, for example, the nuclear weapon worshipping psychics in Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, it's a common trope, either to venerate or to curse whatever technology it was that led to the downfall. Like I mentioned, I was playing Metro Exodus. One of the first encounters you have outside the city is this cult that believes electricity is the root of all evil, and so they either destroy or they hide away technological items. So, yeah, you run into that kind of thing quite often.
Mm-hmm. And in Darwin's world, there is actually an evil robot cult. In other words, an actual group of robot intelligences that are plotting to take over the world by destroying what's left of humanity, and they're called the Metal Gods. But they have humans who venerate the Metal Gods so much that they choose to forcibly be converted into basically cyborgs. And they're hideous, because one of the things that the Metal Gods do to these humans who convert themselves is they remove their ability to procreate, as well as any real secondary sexual characteristics, and just load them down with all kinds of cybernetic and neural implants, including, because you can actually play one of these characters if you wish. One of the things that they have, and it's a feature of the class, is lobotomies. So it's yeah, I mean, like I said, you can explore some really horrific shit with some of these things. And these are probably things that you'll run into in my game eventually, but yeah, it's just
it's humanity in extreme situations, isn't it? That's something we all find interesting. Yeah, that question: how would I act in such a dire circumstance? It's why people are fascinated by the Andean air crash and the cannibalism that went on there, or other stories of survival. They didn't go into it so much in the series, but the role of the saviors in The Walking Dead in the comic, it's rounded out a lot more. Like you learn about Negan's backstory, why he is the way he is, how he was genuinely at the start kind of setting out to save and rescue people and secure them, and it gradually morphed into this kind of protection racket, and that's far more interesting. They
did a Negan episode that was here's Negan, which is loosely based on that comic, but yeah, it doesn't totally do Negan's character justice.
No, or the insidious way in which the role of the saviors changes. There's I think it's Niven and Pornell book called Lucifer's Hammer about a comet striking the Earth, and you get this differential between people who start out from very similar circumstances but end up in very, very different places throughout the course of the book.
Yeah,
that's a great one.
There is a series by John Ringo, which I think he calls like the Fall series. I was extremely disappointed with that series. I read the first book. It was really interesting because the technology fall and the way that people were trying to rebuild from it was really neat. But by the third book, there were some tropes in it that were just disgusting to the point where I just threw the book down and just said, you know what? I'm not reading this shit anymore because it's shit. Sorry, John Ringo. I know you're popular with a lot of people, but not with me. Okay, I'm sure you write better books, but that one's not good.
I always thought a post-apocalypse where the Quatermass in the pit, but they didn't manage to stop the signal. And most of the planet goes crazy. That would have been interesting, I think.
Yeah. Isn't there a Day of the Triffids RPG, basically?
I don't think so.
Something similar?
There might be something similar, yeah. There's a series of grotesque comics called Crossed, which kind of takes a zombie apocalypse to a new level. That would be interesting, I think, if grotesque.
That's a Garth Ennis book, isn't it?
Some of it is, yeah. There's been quite a few different writers have worked on it. I think Alan Moore worked on some of it, but it's very different, his work on it. But this weird thing turns up where these boils appear on people's faces in the form of a cross, and it basically completely unleashes their inner primitive with no filter. There's a Korean horror film, I think, that's kind of based on the same idea, but weeping instead of the boils. But yeah, people do horrible shit in that.
Alex, I actually have season 1 and 2 of The Colony. I like that show, or I enjoyed it, I should say. It was kind of dramatized, and I don't think necessarily it was 100% genuous, just because some of the way that it played out was just kind of like a little too convenient, how they managed to find some things or figure some things out. I'm kind of like, real people in these situations probably wouldn't come up with some of these solutions as fast as the people in the show did, nor would they necessarily buy into the reality of it as quickly. But it was a fun show, and I did enjoy it. And I do have, like I said, I have both seasons of it on DVD, and I do pull them out and watch them every once in a while. They're fun. There's also that series, was it Earth After People?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Handheld
was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
The Sadness is the film I was thinking of.
R2, man, that's an oldie. Silverlock. I remember that. That was from Saturday morning television shows. That was a neat one. Yeah. There are a lot of really wonderful things that you can pick up on for post-apocalypses. There are all kinds of post-apocalypses. I mean, like I said, they can range anywhere from just civilization collapsing to full-on zombie apocalypses to full-on nuclear apocalypses to just ancient empires that were more advanced that fell, and now you're kind of like living on picking out of the ruins in the aftermath. There are certainly a lot of Japanese anime that you can pick up that is based on that. I mean, obviously Fist of the North Star, but also I hate to say this because there's a lot of connotations with it, but Made in Abyss is a really, really good one. And And boy, that one left me in tears. That's definitely not like a let's feel good and happy watching this anime. That's a let's tear your heart out, stomp on it, and then stomp on it some more. And just
I
when
think
you
it's
think
worse because it looks so cutesy.
Yeah, it's not fun. I guess you could even go so far as to say Grave of the Fireflies or Barefoot Gen, because they are kind of post-apocalypse in their own way. I mean, they're short apocalypses because it's, World War II, but still.
I mean, technically, Vampire Hunter D is post-apocalypse.
Yes, it is. It's very much post-apocalypse. Although, yeah, it has rocket ships and vampires and cyborgs and all that stuff too, which kind of makes it cool. And it also kind of makes me wonder why in the fuck they didn't come up with more anime for that, because that would have been a treasure trove, a gold mine.
Yeah, I think there's 2 films, isn't there?
Yeah, just 2 films. You like the TV adaptation of The Last of Us more than you thought you would? Yeah, I thought The Last of Us TV show was pretty good. I mean, I haven't played the games. I need to play the first one. I won't play the second one.
No, I mean, you could watch some playthroughs or something if you really want to, but it doesn't really do anything or go anywhere or develop the world particularly.
Yeah.
The first one's good. I like the premise. I hated the ending of the first one. I threw my controller across the room.
You've played Horizon Zero Dawn. Is that post-apocalypse?
Yes, to an extreme degree. It's like a whole planetary reboot. It's essentially a Grey Goose scenario, but with larger war robots that basically scour the entire surface of the Earth before they shut down. But humanity's managed to squirrel away a few people in bunkers here and there. The kids get gestated from pods and get raised by AI, and then they go out into the world and they become various tribes. And there are other machines that have been put out there to basically re-terraform the Earth, but they kind of have evolved. And so it's very techno-primitive. It always reminds me of an ancient comic strip from 2000 AD called Metalzoic.
Ooh, I remember that one.
Kev O'Neill.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now I remembered he's dead, and that's made me sad.
Oh,
yeah, sucks.
The great ones are leaving.
Such a unique talent, Kev O'Neill, and Metalzoic really showed it off in a lot of good ways.
Yeah, I think that's probably something else to mention is the fact that it's not difficult to take any game system that you want, whether it's 5th edition D&D or whatever, and turn it into a post-apocalyptic setting. Because all you really have to do is flip the world kind of on its ear and change the natural order of whatever's going on. And suddenly you have an instant post-apocalypse. Take your happy-go-lucky Pathfinder game. Oh, it's Galarion. Everyone's happy, and goblins are our friends now, and half orcs and half elves are just a feat and not an actual race. And then all of a sudden, you can inject something like, okay, well, the world goes into upheaval. Your continents are all cracking and falling apart. The natural order of things is messed up. The gods have kind of walked away from the world, and now you have to survive in a world where trade is going to lessen. Species are going to start competing for survival, for resources and everything else. And, you just turn it on its ear, change the trope, make it different for a little bit. I mean, people think of elves as, these really, sexy, long-eared people that, live forever. What happens when you turn that trope on its ear? Now the elves become insular. They're trying to survive. They become your enemy, not your friend. You know what I'm saying?
That's an interesting aspect to the Iron Kingdom setting. So the elves have faced their own sort of personal apocalypse. Their gods have died, and so they keep being born without souls. And they're in this massive decline, but they're also one of the most high technology and one of the most insular kingdoms. So it all makes it very interesting. And they blame human magic users for the soulless being born.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't take much. It really doesn't take much to throw the world into chaos and to change the natural order of things and to inject post-apocalypse into your setting, whether it's mid-apocalypse or post-apocalypse.
I've always thought it would be fun to run a game and then just suddenly give it a sharp left turn into something else. Like, we're going to be playing a cop procedural, and then you have something weird.
The zombie apocalypse breakout.
Yeah. Though, speaking of games whose endings I didn't like, that Far Cry set in America. With the cult that ends up with a nuclear war. I hated the ending of that.
I did not like the ending on that. The follow-up to it was better, and it was post-apocalypse.
I haven't played that follow-up. I was so soured on the first one. Maybe I'll give it a go.
You should, just because you get to find out the aftermath of what happened in that. And it's a bit shorter.
That's not a good thing.
Well, I mean,
as long as it's cheap.
As long as it's cheap, yeah. It's not too hard to convert your cyberpunk game into a post-apocalypse. Just because, I mean, it's like, world economy collapses suddenly, natural disasters break out, and all of a sudden, all the crap that was hard to get in Night City before. Oh.
They should do a follow-up to the Hot War called Brexit, I think.
Yeah, why not?
We're living in post-apocalyptic Britain.
Yeah, well, like I always say, this is a dystopia. It's just not the cool one.
Yeah.
But all right, there's definitely more we could talk about with this, but we're already 2 hours into this, which is an hour longer than I meant to go. But once you get going on this, it really kind of takes off. So I hope you guys out there in the audience have enjoyed it. Definitely throw us a like, throw us a subscribe. I guess it's too late to throw us any super chats if you wanted to, but oh well.
If there's any topics you want us to cover, you can leave comments there.
Definitely, yeah.
What else? Got Week in Geek this weekend.
Yes, we do. We have Week in Geek this weekend.
I'll be running. How do you pronounce it again? Keen. Warring States, Chinese wuxia sort of game on Sunday, and
should be exciting.
Tabletopless.
Yes. Oh yeah, tomorrow's Tabletopless. Yes, more cyberpunk.
Yes.
Can't wait. I love that so much. I really look forward to the cyberpunk days. But all right. Thank you for hanging out with us. We appreciate you very much. Like I said, leave a like, subscribe if you had not already subscribed, and by all means, tell your friends, tell your family, tell people to watch us, because we really need to hit 1K. We really do. I want to get this channel fully monetized. But till next time, y'all take care, and we'll see you later.
Look, the Dungeons and Dragons ride!